Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Litchfield County Sports Program. I'm your host, Tim Gaffney, along with my good friend, Mr. Rick Wilson. And tonight, the legendary Gerry deSimas from the Collinsville Press and also from Connecticut Wrestling Online, the place to go anywhere in the state, anywhere in the world for Connecticut wrestling. So the world might not apply, but what the heck. Mr. Wilson, how are you?
We're back here again.
We're back.
Seems like we never left.
It's like yesterday. The banner's back up.
Yeah.
And for those who watched last week's show, you will notice the fact that on cue, with about 7 minutes left in the program, the banner has to fall down. It's kind of one of those things that keeps us awake. But anyway, you got 3 sports writers here, which means the spread we had out there from our good friends at Vinny's was very appropriate because sports writers don't go anywhere without a spread. Gerry and I were just up in Mohegan Sun a couple of weeks ago, and we'll talk about some of the food we had there, Rick, because you and I have never even had that food. Oh, my goodness, it was crazy.
Well, except for the Class Championship games, which we've been up there.
That's true. That's true.
They put a pretty good spread out.
But I got to talk to you about the Philly cheesesteak egg rolls.
Oh, no.
Put all that together, brother. Philly cheesesteak egg roll. Beyond. I mean, your arteries, you can feel them go, just going. But they are really terrific. Thanks also to David at Zeller Tire for sponsoring tonight's program. We really appreciate the support that we get from everybody in the area. You know, Gerry was the sports editor for the Register Citizen. Mr. Wilson was a full-time writer for the Register Citizen, and I was a freelancer for the Register Citizen. So it's kind of like a reunion. But what we have done is we have kind of branched ourselves out. Gerry does a terrific job writing out in the Canton, Avon area for the Collinsville Press, and I'm not kidding about Connecticut Wrestling Online because on a good night during wrestling season and championships, he'll throw 10,000 clicks a night, views a night. I mean, come on, I pay big bucks for that, Rick. You know what I'm saying? I mean, you know, first of all, good evening, Mr. deSimas. How are you, sir?
Good, Tim. How you been?
It's always a pleasure. A lot of fun up at Mohegan Sun a couple weeks ago. We went to see the Connecticut Sun.
Yes.
Who the heck did they play?
The Washington Mystics.
Washington Mystics.
Mike Tebow coming back
little purple hair with Ms. Dolson and Hartley.
That's right.
We're in the building, and from what I understand, well, it was a good game with the Connecticut Sun. They kind of let it get away, and then they came back and hung on. But I understand, talking to our good friend Mike DeMauro, he says don't bother coming up for that Chicago game at the end of the year because everyone is hurt. There's nobody left.
Well, they won.
Perhaps the playoff run is over.
They won last night, but they have to
so
sweep,
hurt.
and they need other teams to lose out. It's not going to happen despite the 7-1 start.
Yeah.
The playoff run is over, but Deladon from Chicago, that's a
good
player
deal.
worth seeing.
Yep. At 30 points a night, I mean, that is some kind of player. So maybe we'll still make an appearance up there with you, and we'll have a little bit of fun with that. But, you know, tell us what's going on with Connecticut Wrestling Online and also with the Collinsville Press.
Well, Connecticut Wrestling Online, this is our season to rest because these wrestlers are wrestling all year round. You know, they're wrestling in the spring, they're wrestling into the summer. So now's the time to rest, play a little football, and then get ready for the wrestling season in the winter.
Why'd you create that? Was it just a passion of yours when you were working with the Register? Wrestling just a passion of yours?
I was a high school wrestler when I was young,
okay,
and I was awful. But I started.
Those who can't write, right? That's what we do. We talk about it, right?
I'm a much better writer than I ever was a wrestler. But I started covering wrestling at the Register Citizen. I moved on from the Register, and I always had a passion for covering wrestling and a passion for covering sports. And what I discovered was some other newspapers and some other organizations do not have that same passion. I would offer some stories. Well, maybe, maybe not. This is a big game. Well, maybe not. So I decided to just put something together so there's a platform where I could share the passion I had for it and the knowledge I had for it as well.
Were you surprised at how well it took off?
I don't know. I mean, I was just trying to put something together. What I was trying to do was put a one-stop location. To get the information, I would have to go to 7 or 8 different websites across the state to put it together. And I figured, you know, that's a pain. Who wants to do that? Let's get it all in one spot, all the scores, and put it all in one spot.
How many years ago was it?
This will be about, I think, our 14th year.
Okay. So now you have them all well trained. It's a feeder system now,
it's
right?
Working
Just
pretty
feed me
well
Seymour,
now.
Come on in. It's not calling all the coaches all over the state because
God, no.
Up here with wrestling in the Northwest corner, it's not everywhere.
No.
So, I mean, that's where, you know, you had some pockets. It's almost like ice hockey was up here.
Right.
You know what I mean? Where it's just a spattering of the sport. But, you know, with wrestling, we remember Torrington's Dean Soponitis, the one-man wrestling squad. And he was very good, too, wasn't he?
Excellent, excellent. A state open place winner. He did a tremendous job. basically kind of is on his own. He wrestled a little with the Wolcott Tech team, but when you're a one-man team, you're on your own.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, you're always on your own when you're on the map, but when you're on a one-man team, you're really sometimes alone.
Absolutely. Went on to play football down in Iowa.
Iowa.
You know, I was one of those guys on Torrington that started a tradition. I think it was him, and then it was Ernie Tracy, and then you know, it's kind of gone on, you know, from there as far as that lineman. Ben Von Vicini was the one last year. You know, this year I think it'll be Kobe Covington. You have that one kid in the middle of every football team that just seems to be the guy. You know, he's kind of the vocal leader. He kind of leads by example at the same time. You know, with the Collinsville Press, you guys kind of do a little bit of everything. You do the news, you do the sports, you do everything. Do you do weather yourself? Do you do the green screen?
No
Not
weather.
Yet?
No
All right,
weather.
Not yet? Okay.
No weather.
Because if this sign falls down later on, we're going to do weather from now on because
No.
we'll be better off with that. But anyway, Rick, you get the sign if it falls this time, okay? You have a full-time job.
Yes,
you work
sir.
for what used to be Northeast Utilities. I still have a hard time figuring out what. Check the right out.
So do
now,
we.
Eversource is what it is. And you also do like bio work at some points for some of the people in the, what is your job with Eversource?
Eversource, I'm an internal communications specialist. I'm sort of doing the same thing I did at the Registered Citizen years ago. I'm writing about people.
Right.
I'm taking pictures about people and putting stories together about people.
That's awesome.
So instead of the high school kids, I'm writing about linemen, line workers that are going up on the utility poles. They're fixing broken poles in storms. I'm writing about the guys who provide natural gas service. So basically, I'm still writing about people. It's just older people and different color shirts.
Well, it just really kind of worked for you because you love the passion of what, you know, happened. And, you know, I think we all know that we all created what we created because that market, you know, in newspapers and stuff kind of shrunk and went away. All the freelance work kind of went away. It is always ironic when we figure out that every person that contributes to LCS used to work at the Registered Citizen, every single one of us. And that's not anything against the Registered Citizen, it's just that the work dried up everywhere. I mean, Rick and I still do stuff for the Republican American at times, but it's a kind of a closed market right now. So it's why, you know, we created what, you know, we created, and Gerry is kind enough sometimes to supply us with, you know, stories. And whenever you have somebody, when we have somebody of Gerry's caliber going out and writing, I mean, it's a W because you know what you're going to get.
Well, I've said this a long time. I mean, Gerry and I have known each other since 1987. He was hired full-time by late sports editor Brian Sullivan, who just passed away earlier this summer. At the same time Gerry was hired, I was hired as a correspondent. Gerry eventually went on to become the editor. So I worked with him for a little while, but I worked for him, and there's not a better guy to work for. He knows the newspaper business, he knows people, and he knows all aspects of the newspaper business. So I'm not surprised at the wrestling. There's not a better stat guy than this. We used to have big blue binders up there with all sorts of stats. And if we wanted to know who the all-time leading scorer was in the Berkshire League, Gerry had it in a book, whatever.
Well, so the trick is, one of the first jobs I had, working at the Farmington Valley Herald, small weekly up in Simsbury, and I'm covering the Simsbury team. It's my first year there. They lose their first two games of the year, the softball team. I'm like, I'm done with them. I don't have to worry about them for the rest of the year. Come June, they're 16-2.
And really glad to see you.
Yeah, so it was a good lesson to me that you have to pay attention, you have to keep track of things, because not everyone is going to give you the information. You go to the UConn games, you know, we're spoiled.
Right.
Here's this, here's that, here's all the information, here's a few quotes. You start covering some high schools, you're going to keep track of the statistics yourself. And if you want some background, that's the research that you have to do and the preparation you need to do before you go to the game.
And I think when we were up there, I think Gerry might have started it. If not, he certainly kept us up on it. The first guy, or a lot of the guys that would come in the afternoon, would clip all the local stories, and we had clippings too. So if you're following a team during the season, you could go back and find out what happened in that game. So all that background and all that statistical information, he had it, or he had us doing it. And
well, I'm looking at the Connecticut High School football record book, which should just be called deSimas.com.
No,
it is
not that one.
Well, you know, the one that we see that you have online with the records. I mean, it's invaluable to us because where else can you find, you know, all the records that you have for everybody?
Well, this is the high school. This is the high school football record book. The new edition has come out. You can find it at the collinsvillepress.com. You can also find it at the Connecticut Sports Writers Alliance new website as well. This is the football record book. It was started by the late Bo Collinsville at the Hartford Courant. We built upon it. I'm the co-editor of this book with Bob Barton of the New Haven Register. So, and with contributions from folks like yourselves and guys from all around the state, we update this every year. And the idea is to be a resource.
Just looking through this before we went on the air, how exhaustive this is. I mean, this has everything in it from coaching records to yards, touchdowns, how many times, most times blew your nose in a game. I mean, if you want it, it's in here. Arkeel Newsom's in here a ton of times, Ansonia, Tim Washington. It's exhaustive, and the amount of time that it takes to do this is certainly admirable.
And, I think what we've always liked about how we write and how somebody like Gerry writes is that it's not an AP style where you're just given the Torrington beat Wilby 48-42. It's telling the story of what it was, and every time, we're fortunate where we have, just about everybody that works with the LCS writes the same way to some extent, which is tell the story of the game. Don't just give the blah, 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 play-by-play kind of thing. Tell the personal, side about what it is. You and I were at a Tri-State game recently where Jordy Shiner threw, a great game. And you went at one angle of it, and remind me which one it was. When Jordy threw the game, I'm trying to remember which angle you went on.
You spent more time. You had more background about Jordy and his dad.
And his father.
I spent more time one game on, I think, Kyle Weaver, who was our guest last week.
Yep.
And I went at it from a little different angle than
But you and I always enjoy knowing the fact that, okay, I figure that's way, and we don't do it differently based on what the other person is doing, but you just look at a story and just try to tell it. I think what you're talking about
that night was I led with the trophy, where there was Eddie Godomsky.
Yeah, Eddie brought the trophy down next to us, and he was supposed to be taking it home with him and getting a picture of it with his wife, and he was going to call it a trophy wife. Yeah. We did not encourage any of that. That was all Eddie's idea. We love you, Eddie. I hope it worked out.
And he lied to us. We never saw it either.
It never actually happened. Because he was a smarter man. He said, no, I'm not going to do that. But, we have to – games, people know who wins the game 3 seconds after it happens. There's no read the paper the next day, look up, I wonder what happened. Everybody knows. So you kind of have to tell the story within the story, of what it is. Even when we were at the Connecticut Sun game, people in the beginning kind of questioned why we covered UConn. Because UConn's covered by everybody. And, I kind of had to convince my guys sometimes, well, people read your style of writing. And I truly believe that forever because I read certain writers because I like the style of them writing. They'd be telling me the same story, but they're going to tell it in their specific way. There is no better storyteller than Mr. Wilson. And it's not just because he just gave me $10. He dropped it on the sidewalk. I picked it up before he found the 5. But it's okay because he just does. How fortunate am I to have, my lead writer have the kind of skill because you love to tell a story. Everything else is boring if you don't, right? You can't do anything.
I always thought it's been about games and people, and I know working with Gerry for so long, Jerry's always done the same thing. And another guy that I work with, like you said, if we're not getting anything more than what they could phone in, then why are we sending a reporter to the game or whatever? So, you need to get some of that stuff in there. But, and to me, that's the most, the favorite stories that I've had the privilege of being able to write are about people. Or, Gerry, when we were up, we always used to pick out something and try to find something Thanksgiving Day for the Torrington game or the Gilbert-Housatonic game. And we used to try to find a story instead of, Gilbert's going to do this.
They got the trophy. They got this.
They're going to do this. Gilbert's going to do this, or Housatonic's going to do this. Watertown and Torrington. So we tried to find some other way to look at it, and whether it's the kid that doesn't play much, the referee doing it, or whatever. But that's to me the fun part of the job.
Talk about your memories of covering things like Gilbert football and Gilbert Housy, because when you were at the Register, that kind of was the team that you covered. Who covered Torrington at that time?
Tony Dobrovolsky was covering Torrington High School at the time. So I was covering Gilbert, and the late Brian Sullivan was covering Housatonic, and it was a lot of fun. We were fortunate at the time that there was 3 of us, and there was 3 high school teams. So that was fun because we got to cover that team every single Saturday.
Yep.
We got to know the coaches, we got to know the players, and it was a lot of fun. So I covered Gilbert. Dom Whitley and Bruce Kazanets, running the Yellow Jackets. And at the time, Housatonic was great. Very good team. They had a team that won 10-0. coached by Mike DeMesa. And every time I talked to the Hoosie guys, they were polite, professional, but they wouldn't give me anything because they figured I was going to give it to the Gilbert guys. So, it was, a great rivalry. So.
Oh, that's funny.
When Brian Sullivan, I actually replaced Brian Sullivan when he left right after I was hired to go to the Berkshire Eagle where he went. Yep. I ended up picking up his beat at Housatonic. And we used to laugh because we used to get Mike Guy and Witt or any of the Gilbert coaches in for the ceremony or the trophy and a
pre-game photo.
Yeah, right. And whatever. And the Gilbert coaches would always come in loosey-goosey and fun. Mike Guy would come in. No.
Serious stuff.
Mike Guy, very serious stuff. And it was always like end of the world type of stuff with them.
And it was because there was a good rivalry. And there was one year, I think this was the year
the
Housatonic
9-0 against 8-1.
Right, and whoever was going to win that game was going to go to the state playoffs and win the league championship.
Yep.
And that was a game I think Housatonic won 25-24, and I think it was Steve Ongley.
Steve Ongley had
won out of his mind.
As Whitley, I think I still remember the quote said Steve Ongley has kicked our butts 3 years in a row because he did something from us. Yeah, but I mean it was a great game and it was great rivalry. And interestingly enough, when I was up there, Housatonic won like the first 6 or 7 games.
They won a lot.
But then Gilbert early, and then Gilbert just took over and controlled the series for the most part after that. So
it's good stuff.
It was nice because they had not played in quite a while. This was about 1985, and they started playing again. But they had played in the 60s and the 70s, and Gilbert put a licking on them in the mid 70s. They won by like 50, 60 points or something like that. And the series just got very quiet after that.
Series kind of went away. Thanks for stopping by. Everybody went out doing this anymore.
Well, unfortunately, it's, obviously with where Housatonic is now on a JV level and whatever, that game's been gone for a little bit. You hope at some point it can be resurrected or whatever, but I think they ended up playing about, 25 years, so it's probably
about right, yeah.
Right?
Yeah. And classic Thanksgiving games, because after you guys had all moved on, that's where I ended up, was on both Gilbert and Hoosie. And, the part of it is, like you were saying, to actually follow a team from day one all the way through the season. Like the first practice that Torrington football was at a week and a half ago on a Monday and 115 degrees on the new turf field. By the way, new turf field, August, really hot. Last year it wasn't ready at this time of the year. They started in October. Helmets were on in the beginning. Helmets were off pretty soon. Shirts were off pretty soon. Let's try to hydrate. Because then you can see the character of the team. You can see them building. You can see the teamwork building. You're seeing what you're not going to see on game day, or you're going to see it translate into something good on game day, because you've seen them either, okay, they are getting along, they're not getting along, there's a click here, or are they kind of, all together. And as we were talking, earlier, I did kind of a preview for the last couple of days, and we did 8 interviews with 8 of the seniors at Torrington, all very well-spoken, young men, and, I do believe they're going to be pretty much an offensive juggernaut. Got to be able to stop somebody. We've seen a lot of games in which, you're scoring 40 or 50, and like that Crosby game, Coach Gaetano Rodriguez always tells me, he said, I'm not running up the score. They scored 75 points, and they won by 18. You know what I mean? Because, everybody, it was a horrible field condition. It was kind of an ice bowl situation. But you and I were talking on the previous show about the great job that, Coach Rodriguez has done. And I don't think that gets necessarily enough play in the Torrington area, because to turn a program around that kind of, had the reputation that it did. And to this day, Coach wants to win, but Coach wants winning kids. He wants kids that are going to, go out into the world, be good citizens, go to college. We got a lot of D1 players in Torrington
area. You want people that are going to represent your school and your program, whether you're 8-2 or whether you're 4-6. And they were coming off some very unfortunate circumstances. And he's done a nice job in the last 3 years of getting them back on track.
Connor Finn is in his, all of them are in his senior year. You got Tyler Marins, who we saw last couple of years, Rick. He's about half of our size, literally in height and in weight, and just goes through any hole, goes through anybody. He's the smallest kid you ever see who was just so powerful.
Well, I think the thing with Torrington is, it's how do you do against the big boys? And the big boys in the NVL, there's always Ansonia, who looks like they'll be running the ball this year. You got Bagley and a couple of others. But, Wolcott's been very good lately, and they've got Vincent Gambino back and a few others. Woodland's been kind of down lately, but they got their old coach back. And so, we'll see. I'm not going to be surprised if they open up with a win over Crosby, but we're going to see how they do against the big boys.
Yeah, Woodland in game 2 on the road, and then Naugatuck at home, which will be a big test, at home. Because
it's Naugatuck, so they may not be what they were last year. I mean, they were pretty good last year until they ran into Ansonia and got stepped on.
Pretty bad incident today in the news. We're taping this on Monday the 31st. Apparently, an awful lot of soccer goals in Naugatuck were vandalized today. The entire youth program, saw it on the news tonight at 6, it was stolen. They took most of it apart and took it. I don't know if they were trying to sell the metal or whatever
from
it was.
The high school fields?
No,
I did see a little
not
bit
the
of
high
that
school fields. It was like their youth league.
I did see, yes,
so
I did see that.
They've lost probably anywhere upwards of maybe $10,000 worth of goals for the youth program. Right, which is just absolutely ridiculous. So I'm sure the NBL will kind of come together and do something with that. Hey, we got about 10 minutes left, so it's time for pick the topic out of a hat. See, Mrs. Gaffney bought me this hat years ago, and this is the closest I've ever gotten to wearing it. But anyway, we're going to use it tonight for.
She might have been drinking.
Exactly.
No, Deb, I'm only kidding you. Relax.
This is a non-drinking program. Right. We're going to let our guests pick out first. Pick the first topic and give us an explanation.
Give us an explanation.
Read it out and say what it is. Do it a D.
Favorite pro team, predict their 2015 record.
Football,
yes.
The Green Bay Packers, by all means. I know I'm my friend.
Yes, the Green Bay Packers. Pretty good team. What's their record going to be this year? 12. I hope it's 12-4.
Okay. Mr. Wilson? New York Football Giants.
I've always been a Giant fan, and 7-9 again. I think this is it for Tom Coughlin. I know it's preseason. I just don't see it there. I don't think they're that good. Maybe that's just preseason. Just 7-9.
I'd like to see UConn grad Jeremy Davis make a couple of grabs against the Jets the other night. Granted, it's second or third team, but it's still a kid that's hanging on. We'll probably get some special teams duty and the rest of it. So, all right. Oh,
your favorite
Jets.
team?
4-12.
They beat the Giants the other night. For what that's worth.
The only thing worse than the Jets is that the Steelers picked up Michael Vick, that's Mrs. Gaffney's favorite team, and she's probably more passionate about them than I am about the Jets. And when the Jets picked up Michael Vick, I almost disowned them, and now the Steelers have done it. So you've got Ben and Vick. That cannot be a good combo in a lot of parts of the world. You know what I'm saying?
They don't go out at night.
That is quite true. All right, Mr. Wilson, you're up. Kick it.
What do we got here? Didn't I do the favorite high school sports memory?
Yep. Pick again. Sorry, there was gum on that one.
We did this one before, too.
Jeez. Can you get a new one, Gaffney?
Your favorite food?
Oh, baby. Here we go.
Lobster. As a matter of fact, and it's not like it's Four Seasons restaurant, but we had a couple gift certificates that we got for Christmas to Red Lobster. There's not one around here.
That's true.
So we actually drove to Weathersfield on my son Jonathan and myself, and I had what they call New England lobster bacon, shrimp, and whatever, and this and that. Lord, it was good. Yeah, I like lobster. I could eat a lot of lobster. I can't afford a lot of lobster, but I can eat a lot of lobster.
Mr. deSimas?
The stuff that's not good for you. Pasta and steak.
There you go.
Yeah, I'd be kind of in the steak and chicken land. A little chicken francais would do, and a good steak every once in a while out on the grill.
Chicken livers and mashed potatoes?
Perhaps not. If we're really doing badly, then yes. So, all right, my turn. Let's see. What do we got? No glasses, but we'll try it anyway. Favorite holiday? I'm going for the holiday. I'm going to go Thanksgiving. I know it's generic and the rest of it, but Thanksgiving, I think, just because what we do with sports and then what we do with family just seems to be, it's so ingrained with us is that's what we do is we do both. We get out and we see a lot of folks and we do, we cover games and stuff, and then we go home and we hang out with our family.
Sure.
Mr. Wilson?
I like Thanksgiving, but I would have to say Christmas because Christmas is a season. Thanksgiving seems to come for all its importance, and then it's gone. So I like the whole season. I have some time off from school. We always do the family thing.
Yep.
But I usually have a week off. So I'd like to say Christmas with a little snow.
Nice. Mr. deSimas?
I like Thanksgiving because of the sports angle and the family angle, and it's just a time of renewing friendships and checking out some great games. So it's a lot of fun.
Absolutely. You got it. All right. We got more time there, John. How long we got? We got 4 minutes.
We got
more
plenty of time.
Here we go.
Okay. Favorite sports movie?
Aha.
Go ahead, Mr. Gaffney. What's your favorite sports movie?
Yo, Paulie, your sister's over here with me. That'd be Rocky, of course. Mr. Wilson?
You know, there's a lot of them, but the movie that always grabbed me was Hoosiers. It's still, to this day, my favorite sports movie.
Great.
I think it's the best. You know, and there's a lot of them. I like The Natural. I love Field of Dreams.
Great stuff.
There's a ton of them, but Hoosiers touches me more than the rest of them.
Rudy, because every time I watch that, it just
It's ridiculous, isn't it?
It's ridiculous,
Oh, it really
and
is.
The music, it's the story and the music all together. It's just, I love it.
And you know, there's more. You know, we kind of all picked ones that, but you know what? There's some pretty funny ones. Major League is one of the funniest.
really is.
Field
It
of
really
Dreams,
is.
like I said,
Yeah,
but.
yeah. A
A
League of Their Own.
It's a
And don't
great-
cry
it's
at
a great-
baseball.
That's a great movie. The Longest Yard, the original one with Burt Reynolds.
Oh,
and,
absolutely. Yeah.
So there's a lot of good ones, but like I said, Hoosiers for me.
Nice. All right. We're almost out of time, but John's going to kick
we
us
got
off the air
this
soon.
one. Favorite pro sports event you attended? Let's see. Wow. Pro sports event.
Yes, sir.
Football, basketball, baseball.
More as a fan than as a worker.
You know, I'm just going to say this only because I attended it as a writer and I got to. I covered an exhibition, and probably when I was working for Gerry, I covered an exhibition tennis match at the Hartford Civic Center
my goodness,
between
that was great.
Michael Chang and Jimmy Connors.
Wow.
And Jimmy Connors was always my favorite tennis player. I got a chance to. In fact, Andre Agassi was just coming up at the time. And I asked him about Andre Agassi, and he kind of looked, and I asked him in a news conference, he goes, well, you answer that one. That's the future of American tennis? That was his response. But I was always a big, and I've covered the Volvo, but that was all pretty cool stuff. If it wasn't pro, I would have said the Final Four. I
Of
enjoyed
course.
that. You know.
Yep. Jer?
I can't out of it. What Rick reminded me of is when I first started at the Registered Citizen, I was a photographer as well, and I covered a match. Boris Becker and John McEnroe played
Wow.
a 6-hour match at the Civic Center.
Wow.
And
Johnny Mac.
That was an awesome event. You know, pro sports is a lot of fun, and every event has its grab. You know, whether it's the Whalers' final game or it's the WNBA All-Star game or the WNBA Finals. You know, everyone has a grab to it.
How am I doing, John? Can I answer?
Oh, you have time to answer. You have 1:20 left.
Oh, I can sing a song if I need to. Anyway, no. It would be attending as a fan. Mets, Dodgers, NLDS, whenever the heck that was. Last time we were in the playoffs before we
2001.
absolutely destroyed it. And that was when Paul LaDuca tagged out 2 runners at the plate on one play. And it was Shea Stadium. Remember walking into the stadium with my wife, and the atmosphere was beyond electric, and it was, all you heard was Jose, 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 but with 55,000 people saying it. I did not leave my seat for 3.5 hours. I had half a Pepsi because I knew if I drank too much more, I would have to go somewhere. No beer, no nothing. I was so intense at the end of my seat, because I've never been to a playoff game. You know what I mean? My wife, we parked right near LaGuardia, which wasn't bad because then as soon as we got in the car, we were back on the highway. You know what I mean? But that atmosphere with Shea in its literal rocking, because it's so old, you know what I mean? That was probably the best sporting event I ever.
It wasn't a sporting event, but real quickly, because I know we're going off the air, but Gerry sent myself and Gerry Beach to the UConn-Tennessee game in 1995. Most electric atmosphere I've been ever in. That was great. Done.
All right. Well, listen, thank you, Gerry deSimas, for coming on the
Thanks.
program here. We appreciate you always coming up here, Mr. Wilson.
Sign stayed up.
Sign stayed up and
stayed up.
take us out.
Aloha. We're out of here.
Thanks, John. Let's go, Mets.